We're going to call this meeting to order at 5:48. Can I get someone to make a motion to accept the agenda, please?
I'll move it.
Thank you,
I'll make
Kevin.
the motion. All right.
Robin, are you seconding?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, all those that approve the agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Thank you. We have an agenda. Moving on to communications with parents, citizens, and staff. Is there anyone here who would like to speak with us tonight? Just hear this, okay. Anyone online that wants to talk to us tonight? Okay, don't all talk at once. All right, so we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Can I get someone to make a motion?
I'll move that.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Jess. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Perfect. We have a consent agenda. We are going to move on. Well, actually, Brenda's not here. Is she going to be doing it from online, her presentation?
No, I thought she was coming.
Okay. So we're going to skip the presentation until Brenda is either online or here in person for the overview of business, food service, and transportation. Let's move into the monitoring report 2.4, financial planning and budgeting. Everyone should have had that in their packet. And if we have a motion to accept, then we can discuss it once we have a motion on the floor.
I'll move that too.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second it.
Thank you, Robin. Okay, discussion. I think we've both seen it on both BUU side and OVUU side. Pretty much the same on the RNESU side. So is there anything that anyone would like to point out? No? Okay. So all those in favor of the monitoring report 2.4 and of accepting the financial planning and budgeting, please signify by saying aye.
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 Excellent. All those opposed? Excellent. All right. Moving on. Let's see. Governance process. We have a board policy monitoring report 3.2, accountability of the superintendent. That should also be in your packet. Is there anything that we need to do to adjust that for ourselves? Anything we need to add, subtract, other than the dates that we're reviewing the policy?
The pronouns. That was it.
Okay, what should the pronouns say?
We have her.
Oh, maybe we should just replace that with superintendent, huh?
Yeah, we should probably just
All right. I'll make
word
sure.
that.
All right, excellent, yeah.
I'm cool.
Well, you're down? All right, excellent. Okay. All right, then all those in favor of our policy 3.2 with the changing of the pronouns to the superintendent from he or she, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Awesome. Put it in there. Okay. Let's see. RNESU policy for action. This is our first reading to approve, so it will have to come back. But this policy is JH, Federal Child Nutrition Act Wellness Policy. Can I get someone to make a motion to accept, and then we can discuss?
Do it again.
Okay.
Move to accept.
Is there a second?
I can second. Yeah, either way.
Thanks, Robin. All right. Discussion. Renee, did you bring this to us, or is this brought to us from someone else?
Just brought it because I think it was time
Okay,
for it to come up. So I'm trying to get it to the screen.
sure.
Yeah, because this is a policy that has to be reviewed. I think it's every couple of years.
Okay,
And so there is some additional language that has been added to it. And so we just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of the additional language, and if there's any questions that the board may have between now and the time that it needs to be voted upon, we will be happy to answer them.
okay. Did anybody have any questions for the superintendent or his staff at this time? No? Okay. Not hearing anything. Okay, so all of those that are in favor of JH Federal Child Nutrition Act Wellness Policy, this is the first reading, so it will come back to us again in 30 days for a second reading. Please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Bus financing, we're gonna need Brenda for that one too. All right,
Okay.
so we're moving on past that. Let's see, FY 2025 budget environment, also probably need Brenda. Okay, so since we need Brenda for some few things, why don't we move on to Ms. Crosman? We're gonna talk about the pre-K region boundary and lottery.
All right.
She is on the way, so it must be.
Okay.
Is it all right if I sit here?
Oh, you just,
Absolutely.
yes, absolutely.
All right, so my name is Sarah Crossman. I am the supervisor of pre-kindergarten, and before we talk about the boundary and the lottery, I just wanted to talk for a minute or two about our programs and how preschool is structured in the state of Vermont. Next, please. Thank you. We have 5 classrooms within our district buildings. Barstow is a multi-age classroom, and they operate both 3 and 4-year-olds. They run 3 days a week for 6 hours a day for a total of 18 hours. That is due to enrollment numbers. Our other classrooms, we have one at Caverly, which is associated with Lothrop School, 2 classrooms at Neshobe School, and 1 classroom at Otter Creek Academy at Whiting. And those all run a 3-year-old program on Tuesdays and Thursdays for 6 hours, and a 4-year-old program on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for 6 hours. So 4-year-olds have a total of 18, and 3-year-olds have a total of 12 hours, except for Barstow, where all students have 18 hours. Our programs are play-based. We use the Vermont Early Learning Standards to guide our learning. We do have some whole group instruction time, but for the most part, we support students in gaining skills and development through play. We also work a lot on social and emotional development in students, in developing friendship skills and working on identifying feelings, and teaching kids about self-regulation and how to deal with those feelings appropriately and respectfully, how to solve problems with friends and in the real world, how to advocate for themselves, and on executive function skills. We do some work with literacy and math skills as well, both through purposeful materials in play and whole group and small group activities. We use the Vermont Early Learning Standards to guide that, along with the Bridges Number Corner curriculum, and we use some Sounds Abound. We encourage students to use their discover things and use their problem-solving skills in asking how and why questions. Thank you. And next slide, please. We also do spend time outside working on gross motor skills as well as problem-solving skills and friendship skills. And most of our classrooms hook up to the woods, and students spend time in nature as well. In 2014, Act 166 was passed. Act 166 says that every preschool-age student has a right to 10 hours a week, 35 weeks a year of preschool, operated as a universal preschool. A universal preschool can either be a public or a private program, and in order to be a universal preschool, the program has to apply through the state of Vermont. They have to have a certified teacher along with meet some other requirements. In our district boundaries, we have 2 universal preschool partnerships that are private. They are the Fox Hollow Forest School and the Parent Child Center of Brandon. We have 4 students utilizing universal preschool options through 4 for each of those programs, so 8 total that are utilizing the universal preschool program in the state. And for each of those students, the cost to the district is $3,884 for this year. We also have a partnership with a program that is not a universal preschool. That program is in the Whiting School, and that program is called ARK. What's great about that is they are a full-time childcare, so families who need full-time care can go to our preschool program and then transition easily into the child care center of ARK in the afternoons. So within Act 166, there was a right or an opportunity for school districts to apply for a boundary. RNESU board votes on that every year, and last year they voted to apply for a boundary again. The boundary means that our money doesn't go outside of our 8 towns. There is an exception to that. Several years ago, the RNESU board voted to have a lottery system. At first, the lottery system was for 5 families, and last year they voted to increase that to 10. So that's for children whose families attend outside of our district for whatever reason, whether it's they work in Rutland City and just can't get their kid to our programs, or for any other reasons. So last year the board voted to increase it to 10. They also asked that the process happen earlier in the year. So we started the process in January with families applying to be part of the lottery system, and names were pulled in February. And the last thing I wanted to talk about quickly was legislation. So Act 76 has been going through legislation. Part of Act 176, Act 76 bill was a lot with child care finance, but part of it was also that they wanted to increase preschool for 4-year-olds to full day school year. Legislation felt that they didn't have enough information for that, so they put together a pre-kindergarten education implementation committee and asked for them to examine what needed to happen and report back by December 1st. There is currently a draft 1 of the report out. They told me that there is going to be at least 1 more draft. The committee looked at system needs, what constitutes a full day, best practices to ensure high-quality pre-kindergarten education, special education services, especially for 3-year-olds if they would no longer be part of the universal preschool system, ADM, and recommendations for oversight. The draft does not give as clear recommendations as I was hoping. The draft says that they would like the committee would like to keep 3-year-olds and increase hours for 4-year-olds. They had some suggestions with oversight in terms of us preschool being part of the child development division and the AOE. Their recommendation is to increase the ADM to 1 for any full-time students, and to look at how special education services could be delivered to 3-year-olds if they are no longer part of the universal preschool. So that was a lot of information at once. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but the question that needs to be answered is, does the board wish to continue the universal preschool boundary for the 2025-26 school year? The reason this has to be voted on now is because if the board chooses to keep a boundary, we have to fill out an application and submit it by November 1st to the Secretary of Education. And then if the board does wish to keep the boundary, do they wish to continue the lottery system that's currently in place?
So I'm going to ask you.
Yeah. Oops.
Nope, go ahead, Ethan.
Oh, I was just going to say point of order. Do we need to make a motion to have a discussion, or do we get
No.
to talk first.
No, I think we can talk, and then if a motion comes out of that, if during the discussion a motion comes out of it, then we can vote. So,
Okay. I don't mind sharing first, but why don't you go ahead first, Larry?
well, I guess my question is that last year, at the end of our discussion, we had said that we would do 10 lottery
Yep.
positions, and then we wanted to know if we had anybody on the wait list, because we weren't really sure if we needed 10 or if we needed more or whatever. So I was hoping you might have that information for us tonight.
I do. We have 10 there was originally 17 students who applied in January. A few families have asked since that time to be added to the wait list after we pulled the names. So we currently have 9 students on the wait list, 10 students using our lottery system. 8 of them are currently 3-year-olds, and 2 of them are 4-year-olds. So if we continue to have 10 and all 8 3-year-olds would like to maintain their spot, which is what we have done in the past, there would only be 2 slots
Okay.
to fill the 10.
Okay. Ethan, why don't you start us off, since it sounds like you have some.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna I was trying to recall what we did kind of last year, at least, and then my own thinking about it. And I remember at the time voting in favor to remain with the boundary, especially because at the time it sounded like there was going to be more movement from legislation, stuff like that, and more opportunities. And so, we felt that maybe that what we had done for increasing the lottery was effective. However, I just feel like listening to this presentation now, I have no faith in the legislation doing anything except adding way more time to themselves and overreach is what I basically just heard they were planning on doing. And so, I can't, and knowing what we've already seen, we've had presentations from other folks. I know as a young parent, the work thing is really hard, and even the need for full-time care if necessary. So I'm going to definitely be a no for the boundary this year around.
Can you give us an idea of what happens if we do not have the boundary, and what that might mean for our budget for preschool? Can we have that discussion now? Do we have information regarding that?
I don't have a look into the future. I'm not sure what that would look like for our programs. I can say that everyone who chose to put their name into the lottery would not have been able to access our programs. It was not an either or, it was I can't access your program, so I'm choosing to use the lottery hoping that I get that spot. Brenda did run some numbers, and right now, with our enrollment numbers, it's costing approximately $5,088, is that correct? Dollars a year per student in our programs versus the $3,884 that we pay to Universal Preschools.
Yeah, go ahead, Brenda.
So I think it's really, we found out this year it was hard to predict kindergarten enrollment. It's even harder to predict 3- and 4-year-olds because we're talking about currently 2- and 3-year-olds. And so we currently service 3- and 4-year-olds, 113 students. And as Sarah just said, our cost for that is $5,088. The programs are longer. They're 12 to 16 hours, depending on their age, or if they're multi-age at Barstow. We don't really know if, and we know that we have 10 on a lottery, so that's 123. And I think you said 7 or 9 on the wait list.
Yeah, currently 9.
So if they were to stay level, it would be, 135, if I did my math correctly, times the 3,884 without a boundary. What we don't really know is if that, we don't really have those numbers. I don't know. I did receive an email today about the demographic study that we've commissioned. It's in draft form, and it might be available as soon as tomorrow, the end of this week. But that's the hardest part, is predicting 2- and 3-year-olds for next year.
So are there any openings in our own program? Are our programs full?
Our programs are not full. Do you want numbers by school?
Sure.
At Barstow, we have 14 out of 15 of the slots are full. At Caverly, we have 8 in the 3-year-old class, and our 4-year-old class is full. We have 15 in that class. At Whiting, our 3-year-old class is full with 15. Our 4-year-old class has 12. At Neshabe, I don't have it broken down in classroom in front of me. I believe it's 11 in one classroom and 12 in one classroom. It's 23 altogether for the 3-year-old group. Those are smaller than we've seen. And the 4-year-old group is 27 total. It's 14 and 13.
But you have space for 30 in each program, right?
Nope. So Barstow can have 15. So because of licensing regulations, a lot of it it sounds silly, but a lot of it has to do with how many toilets are available.
No, I understand.
So Barstow can have 15, Caverly can have 15, Whiting can have 16, and Neshabe can have 17 in each classroom.
Each classroom. Okay.
So Barstow we combined because of enrollment. The other sites, when we did our screening, there was too many to put in one classroom.
And how many? Do we know how many access the 2 partners that we have, Fox Hollow and?
4 in each for a total of 8.
Okay, so not very many.
No. Last year that number was a lot higher.
Barstow doesn't have more at Fox Hollow?
No.
Wow. Last year it was a lot higher.
Yeah.
Okay. So usually when we talk about the lottery, and I don't want our kids to go without preschool. I think my concern is that if we open up the boundary to everyone, that we may also lose our kids that are in our programs currently. Maybe not right off, but it could be a dwindling, in 2 or 3 years as people realize that there is no boundary and that they can go to Mary Johnson or they can go to other preschools that are available because of work or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know if there's a way to budget for that, because, yeah.
So, are you asking me?
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't really thoroughly talked about it. This is just what I would be thinking. So I would be thinking about, I do think that there is still a need for us to have a program or programs in our district. I would imagine that we would probably access reduction in forces and open up enrollment and then build our programs based on enrollment in the spring, which is very hard, honestly and truthfully to staff who have worked for years, but I think that would probably be the best way to do that. I would be, I'm just guessing, but I would be surprised to see that we didn't run a program at Neshabe, our biggest school. Whether we run 2 3-year-old, 2 4-year-old programs, I can't judge. But I think we are really low on our 3-year-olds universally, right, Sarah?
Whiting is full with 3-year-olds, but Caverly is low and Neshabe is low.
That seems to have grown over the years. You started seeing that about 5 years ago.
In general, the trend we've seen is that there are families that do not send their children to preschool in the 3-year-old and then send them for the 4-year-old.
Okay. Can you tell me how many kids in the 3 and 4-year-old program at Whiting are not from our district, so that would not be coming to, our schools as kindergartners?
If you give me 1 minute, I can pull it up on my computer and let you know.
Well, okay. I was just, because I think, is that the only school really that has numbers like that access, because we have kids from Orwell, we have kids from
Barstow has a few students from Rutland City,
Okay.
but in actuality, we have had families reach out and request Barstow slots that have moved in districts since the years began. So in reality, we probably could have filled Barstow with Barstow students.
Students.
Our current policy is that as of August 1st, students out of district can apply for our programs if we still have space.
Sure.
Every now and then Caverly will get a tuition student too.
Okay. Neshby?
I'm not familiar with Nashby, maybe, I mean, years ago.
We had
I
one
know.
last year from Addison.
Yeah. Years ago, you had one from
Okay.
Slate Valley, because he was my nephew.
I guess I'm a little behind maybe, but could we discuss the implications of Act 76, assuming it's going to passing? My initial impression, and I hadn't heard of it until this presentation, was it sounds like they're trading off 3-year-olds for 4-year-olds, but that, if that's completely wrong, please let me know. I just don't understand it.
It's kind of,
That was my thought.
Their proposal is that they would like to move to full-time school year for 4-year-olds and not, 3-year-olds would not have access to the funds at all.
Okay.
Which would be, we would have to look at how we service students who are on IEPs who receive special education as 3-year-olds.
we'd also have to see if we have space for our 3-year-olds, if we had full-day 4-year-old program.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, just a little history, I'm sorry I came in late, and Sarah does such a great job. So, when universal pre-K was put into play, childcare was struggling, childcare's still struggling. Act 76 didn't exist. So the payroll tax that is now funding Act 76 and actually putting more money into childcare puts childcare programs in a different place than it did when universal pre-K came in. And then, of course, the tax crisis, for lack of a better word, of last budget season was not predicted at this time last year. At this time last year, I think I told all of you, and I think Sarah was on the same page, we actually thought that 4-year-olds were likely to come into schools full-time. I think after Act 127 came into play, all of the changes with Act 127, the realization of the common level of appraisal and what it was going to mean for taxes for community members and unprecedented budget defeats, I don't know if the legislature still has the appetite for that. Not all good ideas can make it to funding. So I think we're in a different place this year than we were last year. If I was rolling the dice last year, I would have expected that they would put in a 4-year-old program. There was a lot of interest and a lot of support for that. As Ethan said, I'm not so sure anymore. I also wonder if the Act 76 tax helps relieve the stress of child care that might also relieve the stress of, the universal pre-K.
Robin? Did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, real quick. So we increased the lottery to 10 and we're still overloaded to 17. Did I understand that?
Yeah, there's currently 9 on the wait list.
There's currently what?
9 on the wait list.
9 on the wait list.
Yeah.
And the reasons for our district is work or preference?
So the,
Why do they want to come to, is it a transportation, there are people work in the area, or is there some other reason?
I did not ask as a question on what we asked for people to submit, but most I would think would be because of their work schedule, they are unable to get transportation for their child to come to our programs just from 8 to 2.
And if there wasn't a boundary, there wouldn't be a lottery and they would be able to come? Is that how I understand this?
what it is that if we didn't have a boundary, then all 3 and 4-year-olds would have a choice as to where they go for preschool. So the reason we had the boundary in place was because we didn't want all of our kids.
Robin, I think you get
leaving.
it. I think Robin gets it, but you're just backwards. They're on the wait list to actually go to a different
Right.
school or provider,
Okay.
not our district,
okay,
because they can't,
okay.
because in that, speaking as a parent, it's like, even 3 days a week works, what do you do those other 2 days when they're completely off or with you and stuff? So a
Gotcha.
lot of considerations are around full-time care, I think, versus, more than anything.
Right, so
Got it.
those families on the wait list are attending the program that they asked to, or that they said they were going to attend. They're just not receiving the universal preschool funds through our district. Lori, at Whiting, the 3-year-olds, 7 of them are out of district, which means that 8 of them are in district, and 5 are out of district for the 4-year-olds, which means 7 are in district.
Okay.
Okay, so if we had no boundary, then it's sort of like a voucher program where they could take that money out of our district and go anywhere they wanted to, correct?
That is correct.
Yes, as long as
Okay.
it is a universal preschool,
Gotcha.
which would have to be
Can I also then ask,
approved through the state of Vermont. Yes.
sorry, then can I just ask one more clarifying question? That just prompted something. So currently then, if they're on our lottery, and unless they're going, it sounds like, to either Bucks Hollow or the other universal pre-K in our district, they don't get any funds if they choose to go because they just need something else, right? So they're actually
That's
almost
correct.
they're more out of pocket, right? So we're preventing
Yeah.
parents from getting any money at all. Yeah, I'm a definite no this time around. Sorry.
Yeah, you'd be
so-
sorry.
I echo what Ethan is saying, because by the artificial boundary, we're denying funds that the state says they're allowed. Seems like we're kind of going against the state if we do that.
So I just want to give a little history, and I don't disagree with either one of you, but I do want to give I do this every year, and I'm going to give the history of why we have the boundary in the first place. So when universal preschool went into effect in Vermont, they based it off of what RNESU was doing already. We were already offering free preschool to our 3 and 4-year-olds before any voucher system. That was put in place by Dr. Mathis and his wonderful staff, one of which is sitting over here in red. So, what the plan was from the legislature's idea was that they would put this voucher system in place, and that all of the other school districts would be like, oh, there's money for preschool kids, so we're going to create our own programs in our own schools, and that we will get money for them. What actually happened is that all the school districts said, oh, okay, here, you can go to this preschool, or, they did not create their own programs for whatever reason. And so therefore, nobody has a boundary other than us, because we're the only ones who had program already set up. So, and over the last 6 years now, maybe 7 or 8, we have been fighting about the boundary with different people because we didn't want to open the boundary and watch our programs get diminished. But we also don't want to keep the funds from students. So that's why we instituted the lottery system. And at the time, 5 seemed to be okay. And then last year we went to 10 because we knew that there was 9 on the wait list. Now all of a sudden there's 9 more on the wait list. So, we could keep opening it up a little bit at a time, crank it open and say, hey, let's keep our lottery but have 20 slots, because if 2 of them are going to be graduating this year, then that means that we'd really only technically need 17. If just those same kids needed space, we could offer 3 more. But the idea is that if we open up the boundary, at least from my standpoint, is that we are going to have to look at our budget, and we are going to have to say, okay, how many kids are we really going to get? And, does that mean that Calverley closes? Does that mean that Barstow closes? Does that mean that we, can only have preschool in 2 of our schools, or maybe we don't offer preschool anymore? So those are all things that we have to consider. It's not just about the fact that there's $3,000 some odd dollars that follows each child. So that is what we have to grapple with as a board. Does that make sense to some people? I understand, Ethan, where we need to get that money to that child that's going to a preschool. I understand it. But I also look to where I've kind of followed this through since 2016 and realized that I don't want our programs to be completely wiped out. And it may not happen in 1 year. It could just slowly diminish. Jessica.
Couple questions. I don't know if anybody has this one. But with Act 76, were boundaries even a discussion, or?
I have not heard that brought up in Act 76 at all.
Okay.
Wait, let her ask her other question, then you can. Yep.
And considering what you just said, Lori, is there a feasible way, knowing that there's so many things up in the air, even with, restructuring and everything in education, that we could keep the boundary and fulfill the needs with the lottery system?
Well, so, I mean, part of me just says we open the spigot a little bit more and we say, hey, let's keep our boundary and let's offer lottery to 20 kids and see what happens. Because I think that, but we also have to look at the realization that people aren't home, with their kids and just waiting to take their kids to preschool 3 days a week. They're at daycare. And I mean, I was lucky enough that my daycare provider took my kids to the Neshabe preschool when it was their time, because they also had kids that were going to preschool. So, there were reasons, and my husband was a farmer. I was working for myself. We could get our kids there. I made sure that was a priority. But some people don't have that luxury, and I understand that too. So, Brenda and then Debbie.
So you gave a beautiful summary of everything that happened, and where we've been and where we have. The one thing I want people to know is that when Universal Pre-K came into play, they actually encouraged school districts to set boundaries. So we set a boundary following their guidance. So I just don't want you to think that we were, trying to be.
No, well, and the boundary was so that
obstructionist.
that they would keep the kids in their own district, so that they could start giving services to those 3 and 4-year-olds, or figure out who needed services, so that by the time they hit kindergarten, they would actually get those services.
In their homeschool where they would be used to everything. And, Secretary Holcomb was the commissioner or the secretary at that time, and we had declining enrollments. And so logic said there's space in schools, let's utilize them. That was the full intent. That's not what happened. And I just think it's important to recognize that Rutland Northeast was a leader in this and may now be portrayed by our neighbors as not a leader, but that's because the rules changed over the years.
So, what's everybody thinking? I mean, I'm happy to
I'm thinking,
oh, go ahead.
I'm thinking the system's a little broken if we have to keep adding to the lottery system. Are we the only ones in the state that do this?
So we're told, yes.
Yes.
It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, I'm going to speak.
I get that.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm done.
Again, this is new to me. But it seems to me like we're having a miniature debate about school choice. And that makes me think about why do public schools exist and their purpose. And so why not just extend vouchers to everybody for every grade? And one of the important answers for that is to protect people who are disadvantaged. So if we create a system, and this is what my concern is, just listening to everything I've heard today, if we create a system where there's an incentive for people with money to leave the district, what happens to kids in trailers in Leicester and Goshen, What happens to families that don't have options? What happens to kids with special needs? What happens to the
Well,
jobs of the
sorry.
people who
Are working in our preschools. Those have to be priorities in my mind. Okay, I'm done, thanks.
Ethan?
Yeah, sure, I'm happy, and I mean, I'm not actually even trying to, fight these other opinions. I was really in the camp of you guys last year. I appreciate, like you said, Lori, your rehashing of all that. And I believe, Kevin, to your last point there, that would be the one that's most sensitive to me about our people. As a board, do we care about our staff, and our team underneath us? And that was an important part, I think, because we were really trying to, it's hard to estimate, and then how do we keep in balanced staff? Yeah, to your other points, what do we do about all those who are really needing it? I think the answer has already been given to us. We already have exemplar programs that are already filled for the most part. Those students are getting them in there. We are approved by the state to be providing those services. The special ed students get those services in those programs. And the rich don't necessarily leave for that. I think it's just more people who need it work. However, the only money that can follow them, correct me if I'm wrong, can only go to an approved universal pre-K accepting fund program. So that means special ed students would be served at those places, otherwise funds wouldn't be able to go to them. That's just all my points now. Like I said, I completely understand where we came from, but I also think this is an opportunity for us to, whether the past or whatever, it seems to be coming in the future. Like I've said before, I have no faith whatsoever in the state giving any real leadership or guidance on this. They're not educators. They clearly just meddle. And so I think there's great opportunities for our programs to evolve as it happens, and we just need to embrace change because it's coming. So again, I don't mind, but I'm definitely still a no. I'll make a note, and yep, that's it.
I was just going to let Brenda raised her hand, so I was going to let her say her piece.
So I just wanted to respond. We have one EEE special educator and one EEE speech language pathologist, and they service students that attend our programs and a few in homes within our boundary, obviously. If a student attends a program out of our district, they do not have access to our EEE, and that's pretty universal. Most schools or most districts that have do not have boundaries and operate on a voucher system, children with special needs that go outside of their district do not get services until they come in as kindergartners.
Debbie?
And just one thing to add is just a thought. We don't know how this will play out, but we do have a new interim secretary of education, and we still have to get an approval for the boundary. So that's a whole other, just putting that out there. It took us lots of months and we sent lots of emails to even get it approved last year.
Right. It's a pretty detailed application that is due by November 1st, and I believe February 1st they have to let us know by, but we had to send several requests for information because we hadn't heard by then.
they only had one district applying, they weren't busy.
Right,
with
and there was a lot of sort of like, are we going to approve it? So just to put that out there, we do have a new interim secretary of education, so. Just to keep that in the back of your mind that whatever's decided, there could be other things that happen in February.
So, to Kevin's point, and I think of what I've been trying to say too, but not as clearly or concise, is that I don't want to just get rid of the our boundary immediately because I am afraid that those kids that need services that we provide may not be able to access them. Maybe not next year, maybe not the year after, but maybe the year after that, when we don't have enough kids to run a program. Especially if it costs us $5,088 right now per student, and we're only getting reimbursed $3,000, whatever it is. I don't want to see us not have a preschool for those students. And so, like I said before, I would prefer to open the spigot wider than just immediately say no more lottery. Or, I mean, no more boundary. Jess?
No, I mean, you know, I don't want to necessarily, if we can just open up more slots, but maintain the boundary and I agree, no one really knows what's going to happen in education, and it's so frustrating to make a decision knowing that it could just, no matter what we choose, it could be completely out of our hands in a few months.
Sure. You know. Well, and I think that's kind of what we were hoping for. That it would just be taken out of our hands and we wouldn't have anything, we wouldn't have to worry about a lottery anymore and we wouldn't have to worry about a boundary. But obviously that is not on the burner there at the AOE, so, or at least not on the front burner. So.
Boy, you guys are making an argument for a really inefficient system here when we're trying to save on efficiencies at different levels. You guys aren't making a really good case for
I know, right?
Tell you that. You should stop if you guys want to keep it. You already, I know, yeah, anyway, I don't mind. Like I said, I 100% get where you're coming from. Brenda, thanks a lot for that clarification. It is great that we have it. Yeah, I would only point out that even if it does, if it does happen down the line with the state finally getting their act together, well, then I would imagine part of the services to 4-year-olds at least are going to have it. So this, of those services. So then we just are still worried about our 3-year-olds. But like I said, it sounds like there's a lot going on and we're wasting potentially a lot of time over something that we're the only district in the entire state that has to vote on this every single year. So I've come around and changed my piece in my opinion. Like I said, I'll stop there, but maybe let's make a motion for something.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to not approve the boundary system this year.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Since we've already had the discussion, all of those in favor of eliminating, thank you, the boundary system for our preschool program, please signify, actually, raise your hand or something.
Get there. Yeah, hold on. Yep.
All right, well, I know you're saying yes, okay?
I can see it. Yep.
All right, and those against? Okay, so we are eliminating our boundary. It was 3-1. And that'll be as of July 1. That does not affect what's going on currently. Okay.
Can we do the roll call vote, please?
Sure. Ethan? Ethan?
Yes.
Yes. Robin?
Yes, I was on mute.
Yes.
Jessica?
Yes. Oh.
Nay.
Kevin? Okay. And no need for me to vote, so. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Sarah, for all of the information you brought to us. We appreciate it. All right. So we're going to go back a little bit. What time is it? 6:37. So you have another meeting to get. You're going to. Okay.
I'm good.
All right. Okay. So we're going to back up then and go. Do you want to push off your presentation for?
I would honestly be happy to push it off. I honestly presented last May, so.
Okay.
I think sometimes you get tired of hearing
It's true. No.
Okay. You're coming into a high season.
I know we're getting ready for the Brenda train. So okay.
So it doesn't
then,
hurt my feelings, and it's out there if anyone wants to just review it.
Okay. Cause,
Send me questions.
Just the days of 7 school boards to present to.
Business, food services, and transportation.
So it's available online?
Yes, it is available online for anybody who wants to see it. And I think it was in the board packet. All right. I do need your information, though, some information for the bus financing. So that we can make the motion.
I would actually like to change the motion. I think it got a little chopped up. So.
Okay.
I would love someone to make a motion to finance for our 2 new buses with municipal leasing consultants for a total cost of $269,996 at a rate of 5.38% with a 7-year lease payment of $44,890.19 per year. This was budgeted for this cycle, and we can't get the financing until we're close to delivery. The buses are in manufacturing. You already approved the purchase of the bus 2 months ago, and they should be delivered, we're hoping December, but maybe January.
Someone like to make that motion?
I'll make it in Brenda's words.
Awesome. Is there a second? Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. Jess
I'll
said
second it.
Phew.
I'll second.
Yes.
We'll say Robin second. Phew. All right. Is there any discussion about the bus financing? Okay. Then all those in favor of the motion to authorize the superintendent to execute the capital lease in the motion that Brenda said, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Passes unanimously. All right. Next, fiscal year 2025 budget environment.
Would you present for me, Renee?
Yes.
See, you're not getting out of presenting tonight anyway.
Right?
See?
That's why I figured you didn't want to listen to another 40 slides from me.
Okay.
So this might be a little redundant for the OVU side, but new for Barstow. Thank you. Colby, you're going to order a new projector, right?
I will work on it.
Second night realizing it's a little bit bad. So this time of year, we kind of tell you what we know and what we don't know, and what the new and what the current environment looks like. It's no surprise that the current environment isn't all rosy and sunshine. So the next slide. So as always, our budget decisions are kind of made up against or in concert with the mission and vision, our ends policies, the supervisory union goals, our commitment to equity of opportunity for student achievement, and consideration of efficiency and delivery. So this is a pretty graphic that I stole from the letter that the governor sent to all school board members. In it, there was a link to a partners letter that was put out by the Vermont Superintendents Association, Vermont Association of School Business Officials, my association, and Vermont Superintendents Association that really had a lot of great best practices. I actually think that link was more beneficial than the governor's letter. We know what the governor's letter says. That's been all over the news. But we are kind of right on target, so we start thinking about the budget in August and September. Here we are in October, and we're asking you for your priorities. And once you kind of outline some of those priorities and goals, we will work as an administrative team through November and to December to put together budgets. In late November, we'll come back to this board with the central office budgets. And then beginning in December, we'll go to Otter Valley and Barstow with their budgets. The end of December, we'll get information that allows us, it's very late at the end of December, that really allows us to get to some good estimates or early estimates on tax rates. By January, we're down to finalizing budgets, maybe having a list of things for consideration, but it's really finite at that time. And then, of course, in February, we're off to the printers, and in March, we're voting. So just a little timeline about when we get information that is crucial. So we always start with our October 1st enrollment. That is children in seats by grade, by site. And that helps us look at class sizes against our class size policy. By November 1st, hopefully maybe as soon as the end of this week, or maybe they'll announce it at the VHI meeting next week with VSBA, VSA, we'll have a health insurance rate that they apply for with DFR, Department of Federal Regulations. By December 1st, the tax commissioner will give out some projections. I'll talk a little bit more about some tweaks that they're doing to the formula, what that will mean. By December 15th, actually, I got this yesterday. So by October 15th, I actually got the calculator for extraordinary reimbursements for special education students, high-cost special education students, and I received the census-based block grant yesterday. So Triple E will come later in the month, but that's a smaller number district-wide. That's around $75,000, where the census-based block grants, I think about $3 million. So it's good to have that number already. December 5th to December 15th, we are finalizing that new number, that new denominator that is used to calculate our tax rate. It's the Act 127 definition of long-term weighted average daily membership. And we do a lot of analytical review and connections and corrections during that. In late December, I'll get information about each town's common level of appraisal. It's usually a Christmas gift. And vocational numbers will be finalized. And again, that's just an assessment into our budget. And by December 31st, we will, Rutland Northeast will have finalized, and we will have a final assessment number into the local budgets. So just a little bit of trends in consumer price index, just kind of an FYI, again, trying to set the context of where we're at, where we've been. So pre-pandemic, we were under 2, 1.65, 1.32 in August of 2020. By August of 2021, this consumer price index, this is the all urban, this is the huge one, not region specific, was 5.35. August of 2022 was 8%. Last August it dropped down to 3.8, and this August it's dropped down to 2.53. So we had unprecedented increases. We all felt it at the gas pump and for groceries, and we're now settling down a little bit more as we head into the 25-26 budget cycle. So this is Barstow. One of the questions Renee asked was if you just rolled over all of the services we have right now. So the staff that are in positions right now with the benefits and elections that they've made right now, roll them forward into next year, keep everything else level funded, what would that mean? So for Barstow, that's a 3.24% increase, which is not bad. And the reason it is 3.24 is that little footnote on the bottom, and that is you are going to graduate. I can't read that, but
21 high school seniors.
Thank you. You're going to graduate 21 high school students, so you're going to lose 21 high school tuitions, but you're only going to put in 13 more. So that is what's really helping save that number and that increase. It's red there to let you know that the long-term weighted average is an unpredictable number. Equalized pupil that predated that was a little bit more predictable because it had a safeguard on it. Long-term weighted average does not. So this calculation would tell you that if we had the same number of students in the long-term weighted average, which we won't know for sure until somewhere around December 15th, as last year, then this higher education spending would have a per pupil spending of $13,512. Our current is $13,308, so it'd be an increase of a couple of $100. Kind of putting that in comparison to what the state average is. The state average, after all the budgets were done, so this number is a little bit different than our June vote because Barry finalized later, and we finalized later. So after all the budgets were done, the state average last year was 13,229.
I think it's important to note that number one, the long-term weighted average, there's not 455 students. It's 455 students when you include the weight.
Yes, thank you.
So the students are actually a construct, and then we add weight to them and then arrive at that number.
So the next slide is Otter Valley. Otter Valley didn't fare so well. And remember that I know my Barstow board has been on the opposite end of that flip. You can graduate out 8 and bring in 21, so you could go the other direction as well. You happen to be on the good side right now. Otter Valley doing the same equation as 6.15% increase. I did put in an estimate for health insurance at 15% at that. Last year it was 16.4. The year before that it was 12.6. We'll know hopefully soon. Same thing, assuming that the LTW ADM stays the same, and I know it won't, right? It is 2,123. In real kids, Otter Valley has closer to, I think, about 1,300. So as Renee was saying, that's after you added the weights that are in the definition of long-term weighted average ADM. So you pay more for high school, you add more for high school, you add more for poverty, and you add more for English language learners. So there, Otter Valley's education spending for 25, the year we're in, it's 12,355. Of course, the state number is the same, 13,229. And moving that, the needle for the status quo budget up by 6.5% would move the Otter Valley per pupil spending from 12,355 to 13,133. So just shy of $1,000, and closer to the 25 average. Obviously, I don't know the 26 average yet. So the next have been updated. This will be new from the meeting that we had with Otter Valley because we actually met on October 1st. So we did not have the enrollment by grades done. One of the things I wanted to point out to you, this is the graph that you will see coming from the Agency of Education in a lot of their reports. And it tells you by color the areas where we are seeing the highest decline in enrollment. That is in the orange family. And where we're actually seeing level or increasing is in the green. We are supervisory union number 36. So we're right there in the middle in the light green. So we are seeing a little bit of an incline and not suffering the large declines that you're seeing on the eastern part of the state and in the northern, and the southern part of the state. So this is Barstow's. The first column is what we projected last year at this time and throughout the budget cycle. We take pre-K out of this scenario because pre-K enrollments and class sizes are dictated by the Department of Children and Families Child Care Licensing. So kindergarten, we had projected 15, and each of the grades are listed there. We had projected a total of 150. The next column is the actual enrollment on October 25th, which was 150. Right? No clapping.
Sorry. It's a low number. That's why I couldn't.
So I really only tell you that because it's a really pretty good projector for 1 year. So then the third column is literally aging everybody up a year. And again, our uncertainty is going to be kindergarten, so I'm just projecting the same as this year, and you'll see that we're looking at 152. So here are the others. This is Lothrop's. I won't go through all of them. We'll just kind of flip through them. Neshabe's. The suspense. Otter Creek Academy, we are seeing a decrease there of 10 kids.
It's good for their space requirements, but not so good for.
Right. Otter Valley High School, so we projected 519. The actual was 504. You know, moving the grades up next year, we're back at 517.
Our senior class dropped like 30 kids, 25.
Yes, 91 to 66.
And that's because we have some kids that are at early college. And can we assume that the others are dropped out?
I'm afraid to say that, yes, I think you can assume that, but it would be a question I would rather you ask Michael
Okay.
for more concrete information.
Sure. Thank you.
So new legislation, a couple of things that is a little bit new this year is the yield will now be adjusted by what's called the statewide average CLA. And the 100% reason why they're doing this is so our equalized tax rate that we publish will not be so far off as our actual homestead tax rates that we also publish after common level of appraisal. So what the state knows is, on average, this year, all of the CLAs are at 76%. So all of our tax rates, on average, have to be increased by 24%. Right? I did that right. So new this year, they're going to provide a homestead yield that is based on the statewide average CLA. So that means they're going to reduce the homestead yield by that 26%. To have a lower yield, so our initial tax rate will show that 76% undervalued, and then it will be adjusted based on each town's CLA, and if they are exactly at 76% like the state average, then it will be that number. If they're at 96% because they've recently been reappraised, then their tax rate will go down. If they're below 76%, if they're at 60%, for example, then that tax rate will go up. So the only change is changing that homestead yield, which will yield a higher tax rate so that the difference in CLA will not look so dramatic, but it doesn't change anything in the long run. And it doesn't change the application or the process. As we reminded people last year, most people in our communities do not pay based on the tax rate. They pay based on their household income. That process hasn't changed and is not affected by this change in the average, statewide average CLA yield. A couple of other things that Act 183 did was the excess spending penalty was reinstated, and it meant that school districts that spent more than $16,000 and change would have to pay an excess spending tax. We are far from that, but one of the things it did was it also eliminated an exemption for construction bond payments for any construction bonds that were approved after July 2024. It reinstated some ballot language that basically helps a taxpayer put this large number into context. So it reads, shall the school district approve a total of a big number, 35 million or 26 million for Otter Valley, 6 million for Barstow, which is the amount that the school board has determined necessary for the ensuing year. The district estimates that the proposed budget, if approved, will result in a per pupil spending increase of X. So in those prior slides, the increases were the 3.16 or the 6.56, whatever those numbers were, and that percentage, what the dollar amount is and what the percentage. Really trying to help taxpayers understand that what drives your tax rate is your per pupil spending. And then they enacted a commission on the future of public education. You may have heard that today the PICUS report was released. I have not read that report yet, but that commission We'll study the provisions of the education in Vermont and make recommendations. I believe, I thought I had it on there. Is it December 1st, December 15th?
Sometime in December. I thought it was-
Sometime
I
in
thought it was
December.
first. If you'd like, I can forward that report to the board tomorrow.
Lovely
It's a
report.
lovely 177 page
Can't wait.
report, yeah.
Give me something to do on my travel. so I'm not-
Insomniac night.
Or while I'm riding with you. So
Yes, you could read it to me.
That's right. She drives really fast, so I get a good facelift.
This is just a slide that kind of explains more in detail how they go about adjusting the yield. So if you look way at the bottom, the statewide yield this year that we're in was set at 98.93. This year that we're in, we know the average CLA throughout the state is 76.6. So they multiply that down, they lower the yield to 75.78, which would then increase everyone's tax rates. And then we talked a little bit about the changes in the yield bill, the excess spending be coming back, the potential impacts on that. And if you show the next slide, I think it will tell you we're fair ways away from excess spending. So if the excess spending law was in place today and calculated, they are estimating for 2026, next year, I think that number is 16,180. We're at 13,000 and change. So we're not flirting with the excess spending.
So we don't have to worry about the state average. We need to worry about the excess spending.
We are not near the excess spending.
Okay.
We don't really have to worry about that excess spending. I can't imagine how we would get to $3,000 more per kid.
That's a lot of things.
Right, and then the other thing is, one of the things that changed was this would also apply to bonds.
Yes, in the future. So in the future, a bond payment would be not
included.
exempt. It would be added to. And in the past, and any bonds previous to July 24 are exempted from that calculation. So again, please take a minute to read the VASBO, VSA, VSBA letter. I think whoops.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. It really provides some nice conversations. When we talked about this with the Otter Valley Board, they really liked looking at it, but, you know, the superintendent will work with the district leaders to draft a budget. The superintendent will inform you of the level of staffing and operating changes made to produce the draft budget and how that aligns with your goals and parameters. We'll educate the board on how the draft budget will meet the state and district priorities and goals. And then the board is responsible for assuring that the final proposed budget will meet the district's priorities and is fiscally responsible to the taxpayers.
Debbie and I are going around to the principals currently and really focusing on bullet number 3, so that way the principals are aware of their need to look at their current data and their student population, so that way we can make sure that we're aligning ourselves to the global ends.
And this is not a surprise, but what goes into or what really costs our budget, obviously it's the number of personnel. We are going into bargaining this year for every agreement. So we have 2 unions. One is the teacher union that covers all licensed staff. And then the other one is paraeducators, school bus drivers, bus monitors, and custodians. Health insurance is a big player in this. And it's important to note that the legislature, health insurance was supposed to be renegotiated this year, and the legislature, after the Act 127 crisis, extended the current health insurance parameters until December of 2027. That's fiscal year 28. So that means we'll not be able to share premiums differently or reduce HRAs, et cetera. Inflation, of course, plays a part in the budget. Special education, facilities, we've spent a lot of time talking about facilities at the Otter Valley level, and we'll speak about it next week at Barstow as well. But facilities are obviously an important driver. And then mostly for Barstow, the tuition, the average statewide high school tuition is $19,774. So every 9th through 12th grader is going to cost a minimum of $19,774. The way the law works is you pay what the public school charges, but the public school can have their guests only to be within 3.5%, and if it is off by 3.5%, then they either refund you or charge you. And the private schools are capped at that $19,774, and there is no reconciliation. So questions the board may want to focus on when reviewing and approving the budgets. Does the spending meet the district's stated priorities or goals? Does the budget include class sizes that are within the district's class size policy and procedures? Which is why on those grids we had indicated what the class size ranges were. Does the budget allow the district to meet education quality standards and district quality standards? Are we appropriately addressing facility needs? Does the proposed spending on staff costs, salaries, and benefits achieve the district's stated priorities? It's really the staffing model that we put together. Does our cost per pupil compare to other similar districts in our region and the state? And how does the budget impact taxpayers and our community? Questions?
The only thing I think, it's not a question, it's more of a fact, is that this board at the RNESU level does not have until January to determine what its budget is going to be. So we will get the first look at it, next month, and then we will need to approve it in December.
Mid-December, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
This isn't a question either. It's more of a statement for the Barstow board members that the OVUU board has instructed us to let you know that we're extremely concerned about the budget this year. Even if we keep it at zero changes, you can see it's over 6%. There's a lot of concern about getting a budget that will pass the voters, and there's a lot of concern about facilities. We had a lengthy discussion last night, and to my mind, a rather discouraging one about what our options are for facility improvements. So the message for the RNSU board is that the RNSU budget is kind of a black box that appears late in the process to the OVUU board, and we want to make sure that those of us who are on both boards, that is RNSU and OVUU, can say to the OVUU board, we've done the best we can to keep the black box budget of RNSU a trim one, because it's going to be such a consideration, and it's sure to be another very difficult budget season for that board.
Yeah, and just to bounce off of that, Kevin, and you'll see it on the agenda, was that the OVUU board asked the administration that when they bring us their budget to also bring us a list of items that are, what was the word we used? Possible considerations that we could make moves with. And so the OVUU board asked that we let you know that for RNESU that we do the same thing, kind of that we ask that when we see the budget, that if there are things that are possibles or whatever, that we know what those are and how they would affect the budget one way or the other, what their impact is. And so I tried to put that on the agenda here. It says list of possible considerations and impact to kind of cover that. So when we look at our budget for RNESU, now that we're not going to have a boundary for pre-K, what does that look like? What do we have for, how can we move that around? What does that look like? What are our options? And then other options as far as special ed, transportation, facilities, what's on the table, what's off the table. Do we not buy 2 buses? Do we buy 6 buses? That cool.
Buy electric bus.
Oh boy, let's not go there. Anyway, but anyway, so that's what we asked that's what we're going to ask for from the RNESU administration, is a list of possibles so that we can really make some informed decisions about the RNESU budget. Fair? Jess is saying yes. Robin and Ethan aren't there maybe anymore?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, just checking.
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other notes? I think we want to say the same thing that, or at least I want to say the same thing that we said at the OVUU board. Please go through your budget like you always do, see what you need, what you don't need, and then, of course, bring the list of items that we can add back or subtract or whatever, based on where we land.
Just one quick question, because I was late. You are doing an executive session at the end?
Yeah, we will. Yes. Yep. Okay. All right, let's see. Moving on. Superintendent search process. And I did not send that out to everybody. I'm going to send it out. I will send it to, so, we have, if anybody noticed, we did put the superintendent position up on School Spring as of October 15th. No, that can't be right. It must have been last week, because, and we already have 3 candidates. So I don't know who they are. Oh, I don't know that we want to clap yet.
Oh,
but,
okay.
but unless you're one of them.
Oh.
No, anyway, I'm just kidding. We do have 3 candidates. But I don't know who they are at this point. What we need to do is talk about what our search process is, and I had Melinda pull that together, and I meant to share that with you tonight, but my phone is dead, so I can't, because I can't access my email. So, but the plan is for us tonight is to determine who will be our additional members to our search committee. The search committee is always comprised of, and of course we can change it, but we've done it 3 times in the last 4 years, so why change it now? It usually consists of our 6 board members here of RNESU, because we will make the final decision. We always include the executive assistant to the superintendent, Melinda Piper. We include Brenda as our finance person, Debbie, and Brian, those 3 administrators. And then we usually ask for a principal, an paraprofessional, and a teacher. So I'm still waiting for the paras to come back with a couple of options for us. But I do know that we have a couple of principals who are willing to stand in for us. And who was the other one I said? Principal, teacher? Right, I don't know teachers yet either, I don't think. So I can put those out in a doodle poll if you want, so that you guys can decide and send. I'll have Melinda send that out, who they are, and then we can let them know. Our first meeting together as a search committee will be after our board meeting in November. Okay, because that allows the search to be open for at least a month. I wanted it to be open at least a month before we started to consider candidates. And right now we are hopeful that we can have someone in place by the end of December. That is the timeline. Any questions? We will meet much more regularly as a board after November 20th. I think we meet every week or every 2 weeks during the superintendent search to make sure that we have everything and do interviews and things like that. So don't go on vacation. Okay.
November 20th is the night before Thanksgiving. Everyone's still good with that day? No, it's not.
It's later.
No, it's later, it's the following week, so that's why we don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about the turkey.
I know, right?
Okay.
I don't want to worry about the turkey.
I know,
Leftovers.
exactly. So November 20th,
Leftovers.
okay? And then that way we'll have our regular meeting, we can let Renee leave, and then we can have our meeting afterwards. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right, then I will have Melinda send out the doodle poll tomorrow so that we can let our 3 other members on the board, on our search committee, and we can get that action started. And please remember that even though we do have the whole committee, the only people who determine who the next superintendent is the 6 board members. Any questions?
No?
Okay. All right. Communication and support to the board. Do you have anything you wanted to say?
Nothing really to highlight, other than we should be getting our middle school students back into their East Wing very shortly.
Awesome.
Brenda, do you know the exact date? I know that it's coming up really soon.
I don't know, I thought it was yesterday.
Okay.
I think it's actually next week because we're
It
letting
might be
teachers
next
get their
week.
classrooms together.
Set up,
Yeah. But the
Great.
classrooms are ready to go, I understand.
and it's safe.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So our next meeting is set for Wednesday, November 20th here at 5 o'clock. Hopefully that won't be more than an hour, and then we will have our superintendent search committee meeting starting at 6. I would really love it if you could be here in person. If you
Okay.
don't, just because it's easier that way, I think. But I won't push it. So, all right. We do need to have an executive session. Is it personnel related? It is personnel related. So all that who can do about the personnel. Okay. So
I move we adjourn and go into executive session.
at what time is it?
7:16.
7:15. Okay. Thank you so much for coming.